Hi viewers, welcome back to Sahara TV. My name is Adiola Fayeon. Now this is the highlight segment, and today we're going to talk about an issue that is mostly being ignored in the media. Now this issue is how disabled people are being treated in Nigeria. And to talk with me about that is Olusola Ogundola. Now we're talking about this issue also in the light of the Paralympic athletes that were London to represent Nigeria and won 13 medals. When they returned to Nigeria, there was no recognition for them at the airport, especially. The government official was there, nobody from the sports commission. So to say thank you for representing Nigeria and making us proud. Although we understand that today the president had decided to organize an event for them, but that did not change the fact that when they came back into the country, there was no form of recognition for them. So we're talking about that, as well as how disabled people in general are being treated in Nigeria. And to discuss that with me today are two people. The first person is Mr. Olusola Ogundola. He's a Nigerian media analyst and disability rights crusader living with a disability. He's also a servant coordinator of Project Restoration, a disability rights. Mr. Ogundola's specific interest is in how the church and government relate with Nigerians living with disability. He's on a wheelchair, but he says this doesn't stop him from fighting corruption and injustice in his country. Mr. Olusola Ogundola, welcome to SaharaTV.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me. Thank you.
Oh, okay. So let's start off by talking about you. Can you tell us a little bit about your story? How did you end up on a wheelchair?
Okay, yeah. 11 months after I was born, I was infected with the polio virus, and that affected my two lower limbs, necessitating the use of a wheelchair. And since that experience, I have had to live with disability all my life. And with disability also involves meeting with the society, interacting with the society, and learning one or two things about how the society feel about people with disability and stuff like that. And so I have had my experiences basically from the church and the general society, how the government treat people with disability, and that's why I am passionate about addressing issues as relating to how the church views disability, the government, I mean, like what we're going to discuss today, how the government see people with disability in Nigeria.
So since you've mentioned that, why don't you go right into it? What do you have to say about how the government treat disabled people and also how the church treats disabled people in Nigeria?
Okay, let me start with the government. I mean, you saw for yourself what happened. I mean, look at gallant effort by these disabled athletes, and yet you don't have anybody welcoming them at the airport. In fact, I watched that on television, on channels television, and it was like these guys were deportees. You know, when people are deported into the country, you know how they come back. I mean, very, shameful. But these guys did something good for the country. Something very interesting. Do you know that since the Goodluck Jonathan administration, there has never been any achievement that you could really point at,
except the Paralympics?
Look at what these guys did, making them proud, and yet they came back and the president, I mean, it does not really mean anybody in Nigeria. But I must commend the media this time around, because this is a positive attitude on the side of the media. Yeah. Like I was telling somebody, you know, a lot of issues compete to get on the media agenda, and decisions are fashioned, are shaped by how the media give salience to issues. And I think this time around the media have decided to give salience to issues about people with disability, and that is why the government is doing an afterthought.
Okay, that's what I wanted to come to that. So you were telling us about how the government is. Don't forget, you mentioned one time that there is a bill in Congress about disabled people. Can you expand on that?
Oh yes. In 2009, the National Assembly, both houses, they passed a bill on prohibiting discrimination against people with disability. After that was done, I understand in 2010 the bill was harmonized and sent to the president. And it's so interesting that, because I remember before the 2011 election, the president addressed the disability community, and it specifically told them that one of his responsibilities will be to sign that bill into law if he wins the election. A kind of
and he's yet
dangling
to, right?
before them, vote for me and then I will sign this bill. It will interest you that as soon as the man got into office, all attempts to get to this man to see the bill failed. And eventually, as we speak now, he has thrown the bill away. And it's just Honorable Abike Dabiri who is now championing another move to get this bill passed again by the National Assembly.
So what can people do about this bill?
Here is a president who once had no shoe. And you will expect that he will understand people who had no leg to walk, people who have no how, people who cannot hear and talk. But it's so unfortunate, it's so disheartening that the president does not even think about this set of people. We are talking about 25 million people with disability. People are the most important thing in any economy. No nation can prosper when a significant portion of its population are underdeveloped and uneducated. So you're talking about a Millennium Development Goal. You are wasting your time as long as you have this large chunk of people not being cared for. This large chunk of people.
Shola, let me interrupt you. This bill, what exactly will it do for disabled people? What will this bill do if it's passed? And how can people have access, or how can they push the government to pass this bill?
Yeah, you see two things here now. One, if this bill is passed, it's going to address a lot of issues, and that is basically about discrimination. Now, people with disability face discrimination in several sectors of life. You have education, you have transportation, you have public accommodations, and what have you. For instance, I did my undergraduate in University of Ibadan. I read library and information studies. It will interest you that all my years in the university, I could not access the main library of the university, the Kennedy Library, because it was not accessible. And the question then is, how can a library and information student be able to go to the library and you expect him to perform? And as a matter of fact, my department was on the second floor of the education faculty. I only go to school when I have exam because I have to pay somebody to assist me with my wheelchair to climb up. So, and since I've been in America, I have not missed a day. And then the issue comes up: who is disabled? Is it the society? Because there are several modules of about disability. You have modules like the clinical or medical modules that says it's the person that has a problem, we have to fix the person. And then we have disability or social module that says no, it's the society. If look, for instance, if University of Ibadan is disabled, the question then is, who is disabled? My academic advisor had to write a report to my sponsors here, and he said, I do not know any limitations facing Olusola Ogundola that will stop him from achieving what he is here in America to achieve. That's what we are saying.
Shola, I so much appreciate your passion about this topic, but I'm trying to make sure you cover as many topics as you can. I asked the question that what can people do to the Congress to pass this bill?
Yes, it's so unfortunate that we live in a country where the leaders don't really listen to people. It's only when people get violence, like Boko Haram, they begin to talk about dialogue. But now, I think the only way we could do it, one, is we need the support of the media, just as you guys are doing. Thank you very much. But we need your support to really make this a public discourse. That's one. Then two, Nigerians with disability must assert themselves around. If it involves protesting, we should protest. We should continue to protest. They listen to us. And it's so unfortunate. Very, very unfortunate. The Joint National Association of Nigerians with Disability, that's the umbrella of all associations of disability in Nigeria. It's just an appendage of the government. Don't expect anything meaningful coming out from them.
Shola, we still have so much to talk about on this issue. I'm coming back to ask you about the role of the church, so be prepared for that. But in the meantime, I want to meet with Mr. Fashikun. Mr. Fashikun, can you hear me? Hello? Yeah. Mr. Olajide Fashikun, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Hi, good afternoon. Welcome to SaharaTV.
Welcome.
Okay, so viewers, Mr. Fashikun is a Nigerian journalist. He's an editor of the National Accord newspaper, and he resides in Abuja, Nigeria. He's a former Nigerian international and former deputy sports editor of this day newspaper. Welcome to SaharaTV.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so I've been talking with Olusola Ogundola. He's a Nigerian activist who is on wheelchair, and he's sharing with us his experience in Nigeria and also here in the US. And he's also talking about a bill in Congress that could help disabled people in Nigeria. Now, Mr. Fashikun, let me ask you first of all, as somebody that had the opportunity of covering sports in Nigeria, including by the Paralympics,
Right.
Why is it that the abled people did not do so well, but the so-called disabled people actually did well at the Paralympics 2012?
I want to first of all say that when you look at any disabled athlete, first of all, has a personal responsibility to overcome his disability, and that has been one thing that is going on very well for any disabled athlete. He first of all must defeat the disability that he has, whether physical or otherwise, and that on its own it goes a long way to give them an extra push to want to do what the ordinary person does ordinarily have been able to do, given the same circumstances. But beyond that, Nigerian sports has, for over about some 10, 15 years, taking the doldrum and is queuing out existence by virtue of the fact that the structure of sports in the country has died down for a long time, and nobody has made any deliberate effort to want to revive the structures of sports development in the country. And you also recall that I was on national television here in Nigeria 3 months before the Olympics, where I also predicted the fact that Nigeria was not going to make a single medal at the main Olympics, and I predicted 5 gold medals at the Paralympics, except that the Paralympians ahead to make my predictions stupid and ineffective at the end of the day.
Wonderful. Okay, so having covered the disabled people and also the abled people in terms of sports, can you tell me, are there some things that the government is supposed to do that could have helped the disabled people, especially as far as sports is concerned, that the government is ignoring?
You see, ordinarily, I don't believe in government getting involved in issues of sports development in Nigeria. Considering also the fact that in my years as an athlete, when I was playing for Zamalek of Egypt, I realized the fact that most sports development issues are community-based. And for a long time, some of us had been working very hard to make government to also understand the fact that its responsibility as government is to build facilities which ordinarily members of the organized private sector cannot build because of the capital-intensive nature of facilities. And when these facilities are developed, they are supposed to be handed over to the state organizations, who now have to work with their affiliates at the state level, at the local government councils, and at the community level. And that's where things can be done and are done properly. Some of us, for instance, who had the privilege of being groomed out of what we call the School of Sports Development. The Equa Church, then as it was, brought facilities into the communities, and children were, picked, groomed, and helped.
Hello, Mr. Fashik. Mr.
In the sport.
Okay.
And that's why you find out that those of us why national for choice. So you find out that most of us had a long span playing for Nigeria. But today, a Nigerian child that is going to have half the same opportunities that we had when we were kids, because of the fact that there's a disconnect between policy and the reality of Nigerian sports development.
Mr. Fashikun, were you in London for the Olympics and Paralympics?
I had the opportunity of going because I was invited to be in London, but I objected to the invitation.
Oh,
okay. Convinced of the fact that Nigeria was going to do well.
Okay, so I want to ask you about corruption in sports industry in Nigeria, because I'm sure that there are some issues going on. But first of all, when the Paralympics athletes came back and there was no form of welcome for them at the airport, I just want to know your reaction to that as it covers sports in the light of the fact that they actually won some medals from Nigeria.
You see, there has been conflicting reports about the correct welcome that was actually given to the Paralympians, and incidentally I have not been able to cross-check my facts to find out whether they were actually received properly or they were not received properly. But by the last discussion I had with a senior official in the National Sports Commission, that was the eve of Paralympians arriving, I saw the paper comprehensive plans to receive them and also make them get and visit Mr. President. What then happened in reality is what I have not been able to cross-check. But ordinarily, read the reports of the fact that they were properly welcomed, I felt livid, and I was equally not shocked because I also understand too that good intentions does not translate into...
Mr. Fashikun, what we've seen at least on Channels TV is that they were not welcomed, and some of the athletes themselves actually talked about the fact that this needs to change, that they won medals for Nigeria and it's like they are not even recognized. So they said that on video camera, so I don't think they would say that if there was some kind of welcoming ceremony for them. But let's go on to the next question. Can you tell us a little bit about corruption in the sports industry? Is there corruption, and if there is, I mean, to what extent?
There is corruption in Nigerian sports, and the corruption is well grounded, and it's entrenched to the fact that this has been on for a couple of decades, so it's not a new thing. Fighting again in Nigeria has been one terrible thing that has put some of us who volunteered to do the fighting at the risk of assassination attempts, at the risk of being hounded by the use of police, by the use of criminal thugs and all the rest of things. But like somebody who had the privilege of having played, having reported sports, so convinced about the fact that corruption has to be brought to its knees. It's been difficult, but there is corruption in Nigerian sports.
Is this about how good you can perform or who you know in Nigerian sports?
I think it has been much more of who do you know more than what can you give to the system.
I see.
I also know too that if you learn to say the truth, you are not going to last in the system. The system will eliminate you one way or the other and make its efforts to remain and perpetuate themselves.
Okay. Mr. Fashikun, before I let you go, were you able to get any of the Paralympic athletes to speak with us on the show today?
I'm aware that the president is meeting them this evening.
Okay.
And all their mindset had been tuned to meeting the president to see what the nation is actually going to do for them. So it was actually difficult to make them shift their minds to any other activity before meeting the president. But I'm too sure that as soon as they're through with the president, they may be in a better shape of mind to speak with
so viewers, we try to reach out to some of the Paralympic athletes just to hear their view and their story. Mr. Fashikun, my last question is how can a disabled person get to where these people are today? If someone is disabled but they are gifted in some kind of sports, what do they need to do before they can be qualified for the Olympics? And I mean, who do they need to know or talk to, and stuff like that?
I think first thing to do is we have to first of all clamor for a change in our attitude to the treatment of Paralympic athletes. The able athletes themselves have a conducive atmosphere to exhibit their talents. So you now want to wonder what then is going to be the kind of situation that the disabled athlete is going to have. But ordinarily, I think with their performance in the previous Olympics and this Olympics particularly, by virtue of the fact that the able-bodied would not do anything that they have done, I think it will open a lot of room for Paralympians to be properly and better treated. I think it's also about marketing of Paralympic sports by competent professionals.
I see. Mr. Fashikun, thank you so much for joining us, but I can't let you go without asking this question. Why do you think the able-bodied did not do well at the Olympics?
I think the problem is our structure of discovering athletes is weak. The quality coaches are tired and retired, and they are expiring out of the system without competent replacement. So even in the next Olympics, Rio, I am not too confident that Nigeria is going to do very well. I mean, like every medal we have won in the Olympics, there are side chances. We had not deliberately worked for any medal. The medals we have won are by virtue of the excellence of the individual athletes. So, as a system, we really need to get our acts together to get things going well. But until that is done, I'm not too sure that we're going to do that, because statistics have revealed that for an Olympic athlete, you will need about 2,500 days of programmed training. We have less than 2,000 days to the Rio Olympics. So, and we have not started. Then in that case, scientifically, it is obvious that Nigeria is not going to do well in Rio Olympics.
I see. Thank you so much again for joining us. I'm going to go back to Mr. Shola Ogundola. Are you still there?
Yeah, very much
okay.
there.
It's good that you're both on. But Mr. Can you talk to us about the role of the church when we're talking about disabled people in Nigeria? We just spoke with Mr. Olajide Fashikun, and he's talking about the role of sports, you know, with disabled people in Nigeria. Now, can you talk about the role of the church?
Yes, I think the church has a very important role to play in really enhancing issues about people with disability, and not focus on this idea of miracle all the time. Because I spent the better part of my life trying to get miracles, and it wasn't forthcoming. Now I'm a Christian, and I believe in the power of God. I know God can heal if He wants to. And I know you can also have faith and get healed. But all I keep hearing all the time is that I don't have faith. That's what they keep telling me. But like you see, there's this man who was disabled. He was sitting at the gate of the beautiful gate in the temple in the Bible. That's Acts chapter 3. And Peter and John came to him and said, look, the guy was actually looking for money. He wasn't looking for healing. And you must understand that this was just about 3 months after Jesus went to heaven. And Jesus must have seen this guy there. So what happened was that this guy was looking for money, and Peter and John did not look. Gold and silver we do not have, but such as we have, we'll give to you. So what I'm saying is that it's not all the time faith on the part of the person with disability. Pastors, what about their faith? And we see, I've seen a lot of refined babalawos on pulpit these days. They tell the pastor, this person has been dancing 13 years, and now they lift a brand new wheelchair, a brand new crutches. They tell you he's blind since he was born. And they will pick a white paper and ask him what's this, he will tell you white. We are not fools. But my role, what I have with my project restoration is to let the church see the place of people with disability. In the Bible, there are two great men apart from Jesus Christ. Moses of the Old Testament, Paul in the New Testament. Moses had a disability in the Old Testament, and he was telling God, when God asked him to go to Egypt to set the people of Israel free, in Exodus chapter 4, if you look at verse 7, 8, 9, 10, he told God, look, since I've been talking, you see I'm slow of speech and all this stuff. And God asked the question. And that was what Joel told me initially. God said, who made the deaf? Who made the blind? Who made the sick? And all that. Have not I the Lord? And then I sat down and said, look, is it that God really knows about this? Come to the New Testament. In 2 Corinthians chapter 12, if you look at verse 7, 8, 9, 10, Paul was saying to God that, look, I thorn in my flesh. Could you please take this out? And God said, Paul, the problem is not your disability, because my grace is sufficient for you, for my strength is made perfect in weakness. And a lot of theologians say, oh no, you see, this is not bodily issue. Go to Galatians chapter 4. Look at verse 11, 12, 13, 14. Paul was telling the Galatians, when I came to you in my body infirmity, you accepted me. And he said, if it were possible, some of you would have taken your eyes and given them to me. You now go to Galatians chapter 6, verse 11. In fact, when you talk in blind studies, when you talk about large letters, Paul said, see what large letters are written to you. It goes to say that even the issue about large letters started in the Bible. Look at two great men with disability in the Bible. So what I'm trying to tell the church is that let people with disability come and worship. Don't put structural barriers just to get them out and then do fake miracles. No, let them come. They have something to contribute to the body of Christ. If Paul can contribute, if Moses can contribute, and then you look at Timothy. Timothy had an ailment, and Paul was saying, look, Timothy, use wine for your frequent ailment. Look, it was not about healing all the time, so people can still express themselves. If you look at the Bible, those people Jesus Christ healed, you will find out that there were people who were held bound by their disability. But I don't think I'm being held down by my disability.
I
don't think these sports guys have been held down by any disability. So you can live up.
Shola, hold on, let me interrupt you. Viewers, that has been Pastor Shola Ogundola. I so much enjoy what you're talking about, but I wanted you to summarize it into what exactly the church needs to do. Are you saying that disabled people sometimes are put at the back of the church, or they are not allowed into the church, and the church needs to change this? Can you, like, I appreciate your preaching,
Okay, okay.
Pastor Shola,
Well,
but
sorry, I'm not preaching,
just...
but I'm just trying to. I mean, I'm being.
Okay, so
I'm
what
sorry about
exactly
this,
does the church
you
need
see,
to do? They
this is
need
what
to
I'm trying
stop
to say.
discriminating against disabled people, right? That's what you're saying?
You said?
I'm saying, what exactly does the church need to do? They need to stop discriminating against disabled people. Is that what you're saying?
Now, this is the setting. I must tell you the fact. I have seen churches that cook up miracles, and when real people who have disability come, they shield them away.
Mm.
They are
And then
not
they put
welcomed
up
at
the
all. In fact,
fake...
the way they will treat you at the entrance, you will think and you leave that place.
And then they put the fake disabled people up of receiving miracles, right?
Yes.
I see.
Yes.
Okay.
But when the people who have the real disability come,
they pull them at the back. Okay.
All what they do is fake. You get what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, I completely understand what you're trying to say. I wanted to throw in...
It kind of put a kind of question mark on.
Yeah, I want to throw in a question to Mr. Olajide Fashikun
on your spiritual power. Let these people come and worship God and find purpose for their life. That's all.
Okay, so let me ask Mr. Fashikun quickly. Do you think that anything will change now in Nigeria with the way that the Paralympic athletes did? Would anything change with disabled people? Shola has told us a lot about a bill in Congress that could actually help with discrimination against disabled people in Nigeria. And now that they're the ones that have made us proud, and by the way, Shola said something before you came on, Mr. Fashikun. He said this is the first time that Nigeria has won anything since President Jonathan came into power in terms of international contest. So would it change now in Nigeria now that the disabled people are the ones that came back with medals?
Honestly speaking, if you ask me based on where we're coming from, I will tell you that nothing will change. I also understand the fact that the federal government of Nigeria realized the fact that since then Goodluck Jonathan actually came on board, this is the second time that his government is actually winning any medal either at the continental level or at the intercontinental level. The first would have been Scrabble, because in Scrabble they have always brought back the African Championship. So that's at the continental level, but at the intercontinental level, this is a real first time that his government is actually winning medals in terms of any competition. So ordinarily, I think also that Nigeria did not do well at the main Olympics. One expects the president to be able to put together a policy position in his reception of the athletes discipline, and we hope that the policy decision of the president will be carried out to the letter. But beyond that, I can tell you that I remain incurably pessimistic that nothing may change.
But what would cause a change if anything would change? Because you're saying that nothing will change, even with the fact that they came back with medals. What would happen before something would change? And then after you talk about that, I want to ask Shola how she feels about hearing that nothing may change even despite winning the medal. So Mr. Fashikun, what would happen before anything would change?
I don't think, the issue again is an average Nigerian is not bothered about what does not directly infringe on him. Even when it infringes on him directly, he sometimes will prefer to keep quiet and just run the mill. Otherwise, you also ask yourself, given the quality of two judgments against Nigeria Football Federation, which has been declared illegal, today it is still sitting there pretty well, and even still having to do a lot of things with the same government that is supposed to implement the order of court. So, if that is an example, then it shows that there's practically no hope. And
Okay.
I don't know what
So
can change,
you don't
except
know
also
what
too
can
that
change.
if the ruling government, for example, the ruling party decides to say, okay, let's make sports a cardinal position, yeah, something may change. But it is now. I am doubting it very well, very well. I don't
Okay.
know what can cause a stimulus
I
that will
see.
cause a change for
So,
Nigerian sports.
all right. So, Shola, how do you feel hearing something like this? That despite the Paralympics and all that, that things may still be as usual in Nigeria.
Yes, from the side of because now you see we have created a kind of prejudice here by bringing up this issue about in group and out group, and when you have in group and out group, there's always a power play of power disparity. You understand? So we are like the out group, and people without disability are the in group. But you know the funniest thing is just this. What my professor told me recently. Even the quote and unquote able-bodied people, they are just TAB, temporarily able-bodied. If you live in Nigeria, the roads are not good, so you are very likely to become disabled any minute. Also, look, like I told you, I had polio. Children still have polio because I asked my parents, why did I get polio? And they told me, look, we immunize you against this stuff. And people still get immunized, and yet they still come down with polio. That's another issue we should look at. Why are people being immunized and dead? But in order to get things, I don't believe the fact that things will not change. It's not going to remain like this. I'm here to school because I'm going to come back to Nigeria. Look, we are going to bring up a critical mass, and it's just that it is he who wears the shoe that knows where it pinches. So if we don't speak for ourselves, then nothing will. I don't expect anybody who don't have a disability to really fight this cause. It is people with disability who must rise up like the African Americans did while during the period of slavery. So people with disability in Nigeria must rise up and fight for what is justifiably theirs. Issues about disability is no longer charity. Disability is a human rights issue, and so we must take it as such. We are human beings, we have life to live, and so nobody under any circumstances has the right to deprive us of this life. And so when we come back, we're going to start. When I come back particularly, I'm talking about myself. I think I am going to get involved in a lot of protests to make this government understand that people with disability have rights, and those rights must be respected.
Shola, I like the way you spring so strongly about this. And what was that abbreviation again? Temporarily able.
TAB, temporarily able body. That's what every able people quote and unquote.
Okay, let me ask you, Shola.
That's what they are. I mean, they are all temporarily able body because any single thing now you become disabled. The roads are bad in Nigeria. You know that for yourself.
Okay, so what you're saying now is this goes beyond the Paralympics and all that. It starts from the infrastructures, the things that we have in place.
Exactly. Look, the basic solution to this problem is let us pass into law that bill. I know implementing it is going to be another issue, but don't worry, just pass it first. When you pass it, then we'll talk about implementing it. But the president must sign this bill and pass it into law. Simple.
Okay. I so much appreciate both of you guys talking to me about this today. It seems to me like this goes a long way. It's not just about winning gold. It comes to day-to-day things like when you get into Molue or bus in Nigeria. Is there Molue for the disabled people? Is there Okada for people?
There is nothing like Molue. There is nothing like Okada. In fact, when the president hiked the price of fuel and this thing, he brought some buses. These buses were not accessible for people with disability. So you are kind of hacking out over 25 million Nigerians with disability. So I mean, it's time we begin to think about, I mean, people. And do you know one thing? Let me just quickly add this.
Go ahead.
When I was in Nigeria, I lived in Ibadan, in Bodija. I know of rich men who built houses that when they became old, they started restructuring those houses so that they could see the top of their build. They could go to the next floor. What we are saying is, why don't you just make these things accessible? Whether you have a disability or you don't, it's gonna benefit everybody. That's just the basic idea about this stuff. I mean, about it.
And then you made mention that the church should not just expect miracles. They should include disabled people right now, get them involved in worship, and make their worship centers accessible. Because a lot of churches and mosques are now accessible also for the disabled people. So,
but the reason is because they are scared, because when these people come, miracles don't happen. So they kind of use that to shield them away from coming to their congregation.
And affects their reputations, right?
If they don't get healed, it's not a problem. They will maximize their potential and become useful
Thank
to
you.
society.
Well, I look forward to you going back and making a change. So we'd like to hear more about that.
I can't wait to go back.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much.
When Shola comes back to Nigeria, he has a lot of support structures that we can make available to jointly work and get deliver that particular objective for the nation's interest.
Wonderful.
Yes, thank you very much, sir. Because something I have also learned here is that the disability community must also partner with other social and civil societies. You understand? So it's not a fight we can do it alone, but we can start it. We can do a kind of synergy, build a critical mass, and get this thing done. Thank you very much, sir, for that promise, and I hope we will work from that. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
All right, so thank you so much, guys, for joining both of you, Mr. Olusola Ogundola and Mr. Olajide Fashikun, talking about how Nigeria treats disabled people, especially in light of the Olympic athletes that just came back from London, winning gold medal and being proud. So, viewers, that has been our segment, and in the highlight segment today, that has been our topic. We've been talking about disabled people. But before we go, we also have another in-studio guest that will be joining us soon. His name is Mr. Flint. I'm sure you've probably seen his music on YouTube. So he's a disabled Nigerian that has been singing, and he's become successful in this area. So he's going to talk to us about his challenges and overcoming them, and how he does what he's doing from day to day. So stay tuned. We'll be right back.